Hello folks, my name is Marco Landry, and in this short video I'm going to be talking about the Norton Racing Perfect Shift Arm Kit. So for those of you who have seen my videos before, I recently installed the HM QuickShifter Plus SS on my 2018 Yamaha R3. I have a Sato rear set. Everything is working perfectly. However, I'm a bit anal, and when I'm looking at this setup, I'm always a bit concerned because the HM module is super close to the mounting bracket for the rear set. So when I'm shifting, the gap between the module and the plate is in millimeters, so it's very close. And the knuckle is already really far out on the spline, so that always makes me a bit nervous. So I've been looking at different solutions to try to resolve this issue, and this Norton Racing Perfect Shift Arm Kit will allow me to do just that. So this kit comes with this knuckle here with two different holes, so you can adjust where your rose joint will finish. It comes with two female rose joint or M joint, but the most interesting part is it comes with various spacers. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 8 different spacers here. So you can see those different spacers will allow me to adjust the distance between the shift arm and the shift rod. So right now everything is fixed with the OEM shift knuckle, and what's happening is that angle from the top of my shift rod to the bottom of shift rod is going towards the inside of the bike, and that's why it gets so close to that plate holding the rear set in place. So hopefully with this new shift arm kit and those various spacers, I'll be able to find the perfect location or the perfect distance where that rod will be in a perfect alignment and parallel with the bike and further away from the plate. So that's what I'll be doing next few minutes. So if that's something of interest, stay right there and we'll start right now. Okay, so the first step will be to take all of this apart. So in order to do so, in my case, I will need a 10mm and 9mm wrench. And we're just gonna loosen this up here. And once this is loose, we'll be able to start taking all of this apart to fit the new rod and the new shift knuckle in place. Okay, so this is what I was talking about here. So this is the OEM shift knuckle, and you can see that there's no option to increase the distance between the M joint and the shift knuckle. So with the new one, I'll be able to increase the distance and adjust the distance up to my liking. So that's going to be a lot easier. And also, the new one, I mean, that's pretty much the same angle, but there's two different holes here where you can pick which one will give you the best angle in relationship to your rear set. So that's going to be another advantage as well. So I'm all set to start the assembly, but before I do so, I just want to let you know that I've changed or replaced a few parts. So the kit from Norton comes with these M joints with a female connector, and the female connector obviously will require a threaded rod with two nuts to hold the M joint and the rod in place. For those of you who know me, you know that I like to have things as simple as possible and with as little parts as possible. So what I'm going to do is that I have these M joints with a male connector that will connect directly into my rod. So this way I only need one nut as opposed to two nuts, and I have less chance of failure or stuff becoming loose. So that's why I prefer to have the male threaded M joints. And obviously what I'm going to do in this case, I'm simply going to thread this into my rod here, assuming I'm doing this on the right side here. So I have a left threaded M joint and a right threaded M joint or rose joint, and that's what I'm going to use in this case. And when you do this, just so I'm clear here, you only need one nut, because you don't need a nut that will hold that M joint at the extreme edge. So that's why I prefer this, because it's a bit simpler and gives you a bit more room for adjustability on that rod, especially if you need to go close to the end. You don't have that extra nut that will be in the way. And the other thing that it's worth mentioning as well is that I initially had like a fairly small rod. In this case, I'll go with a longer rod. So the other thing worth mentioning as well is that when I reconnect the knuckle, I'm gonna go counterclockwise from before as well, because I had some problems sometimes when I was shifting with the previous setup, that my lever would go all the way up. And when I contacted Sato Racing, they told me just to open up counterclockwise the position of the knuckle on the spline. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'll see if that's going to resolve my issue with the shifter flipping all the way up. So having said that, I'm going to start with this rod and see if everything is going to fit properly. So I'm going to connect now the rod on the HM module that has a threaded rod in it with the two nuts already there. So that was there from the previous setup, obviously. So we're going to thread this probably halfway through. And from there, I'm going to take my other M joint. So the other Woodcraft M joint. This is the right hand thread one, and I'm going to thread this to the HM module. And again, I'll just go halfway through. And now, in terms of length, I just want to make sure that this is the right length. So I'm going to connect that rose joint onto my shifter here. And in my case, there's quite a bit of adjustability on the Sato Racing rear set, but I'm going to use the lower left hole, and I'll start with this and see how that's going to go. And now for the next step, what I want to do is adjust the angle of the shift knuckle. And bear in mind here that if you haven't seen my previous video, normally what you're aiming for is that the angle from the shift knuckle with the shift rod needs to be as close as possible to 90 degrees. So if I zoom in on this a bit here, so this is what it looks like now. And I have various spacers, as I mentioned earlier. So let's see if we can see this here. So you can see here I have my various spacers that I've lined up in terms of height. And I think I'm going to need one of the longest ones. So I'll start with this. This is just a wild guess, but I'll start with the third longest one. So this spacer will go here, and the M joint obviously will go on top of this. And I'll take one of the bolts that came with the shift arm kit, and it comes with a lock nut as well, or a nylock I should say. Put the nylock on just loose. I won't put it very tight just yet. The first thing that I want to make sure is that I have the proper angle here, so it looks like my angle is very close to a 90 degrees, so I think that looks pretty good. the shifter, I want my shifter to be a little bit higher, so we can probably adjust it by screwing this here a little bit more, and that seems about right there. So now if I look at the knuckle on the shift arm, there's enough grab there, so that looks decent as well. And my shift rod seems to be fairly parallel with the bike, and it's not too close to the plate holding the rear set. And when I'm shifting, it looks like there's enough clearance that the lever will not touch that rod. So overall now I think that the setup is pretty good like this. My angle here is maybe a bit more open than before, but I still think that's going to work okay. It's definitely not 90 degrees, it's maybe more like 100 degrees, but I think that will give me a better control, or not better control, it's going to give me the feel I was looking for without tilting my lever up whenever I'm trying to shift up. Notice here that this wire is purposely left underneath, and there's an extra hole here underneath, and I'm going to attach or tie wrap this wire to that small hole underneath so that it stays out of the way, and this way it's going to be nice and secure, and I think it's going to be a much cleaner look by having this wire underneath like this. All right, so let's secure everything in place now and see how everything works out. I'm fast forwarding all of these steps here since I'm simply tightening the retaining nuts, and I'm also zip tying the HM module wire to the knuckle. Okay, so now that this is done, I want to bring attention to two different things here. I purposely left some slack in this wire here. So you can see that there's a bit of a loop underneath here, and this loop is there just because I want to make sure that when the shifter is moving, there's enough slack that we won't put undue stress on this specific wire right here. So that's why you can see that little loop underneath here, and it's simply zip tied to the hole under that shift knuckle. So the other important thing as well is that this rod here needs to float between the two M joint or between the two rose joints. So by floating, I mean that it needs to be able to move freely on its axis like so. It doesn't need to move much, but it needs to be able to move freely. And what I would recommend when you do this as well is that put some grease on these rose joints as well, so that it stays well lubricated all the time. And one last thing as well here is that make sure that when you connect all these components together, that there's enough thread that goes into the rod. So here you can see that my M joint is probably threaded up to here, and same thing with this rod here. It's threaded, at least 1/4 of the way in here and 1/4 of the way in this rod, and there's only a bit of thread exposed. And same thing with this one. So when you're adjusting this, if you get too close to the edge of one of the male threaded rod, then you need to reposition your shift knuckle on the spline, maybe by moving it 1 click or 2 click, left or right, so that you can adjust this and make sure that you have enough grab with that rod or with this threaded rod. All right guys, that was the process to install that perfect shift kit from Norton Racing. This is another great product from Norton Racing. It definitely allows you to tweak and adjust your shifter to make sure that it meets your requirements and your style of riding. I really love this. I love this so much, and I'm going to look to do the same thing on both of my R6. And as you saw, I mean, this is nothing super complex. It just takes a bit of time. You just need to make sure that everything works properly. And once you're done with all of these adjustments and everything is secure, take the bike off the stands, put it on the ground, hold your clutch and shift from 1 to 6, 6 to 1, go neutral, try different things, make sure that it works flawlessly before you go for a ride. And if it works, perfect. If not, you go back on the stands and make sure that you tweak everything until it's perfect. So that's it for me. Hopefully that video was helpful. If it was, do me a favor and please smash that like button. If you have any questions, comments, or concern, as usual, feel free to connect with me or post your comments below. And until next time, stay safe, ride safe, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.